We should probably be talking about the Board of Peace ceremony that is about to begin, which looks not unlike the bar in Star Wars. It's a collection of freaks, weirdos, war criminals and genocidal leaders who are now joining what Donald Trump calls the Board of Peace in return for giving him $1 billion, which Vladimir Putin intends to find from assets that have been frozen as an internationally sanctioned punishment for the illegal invasion of Ukraine. So where do we put that on the list? We've got to write down the Putin and the sanctions, the Netanyahu and the genocide, the Board of Peace. Should we cross and see what's going on there? Well, why not, eh? Because I don't know what else we should be talking about. Let's have a listen.
And we'll work with many others, including the United Nations. But I want to thank you all for being here. Yesterday we had an incredibly successful visit with many of the world's top business leaders, the best, the biggest, most successful, and foreign heads of state. And now we have one of
this is real, if you're just tuning in. This is the actual president of the actual United States on actual television.
Board of Peace. I want to thank the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner, and their extraordinary work. I mean, they have done an amazing job. We have peace in the Middle East. Nobody thought that was possible. We've settled 8 wars, and I believe another one's coming pretty soon.
Go on, name them, Donald.
The one that I thought was going to be an easy one has turned out to be probably the most difficult. Last month, 29,000...
There was 11 people killed in Gaza yesterday, including journalists and children, according to medics on the ground there. So that's the ceasefire.
27,000 in the month before, 26,000 in the month before that. It's terrible. But we have meetings and we think we're making a lot of progress. Thanks as well to Secretary Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, and Chris Wright, U.S. Trade Representative, Jameson Greer. They're all doing such an incredible job. Ambassador Callista Gingrich, who was here.
That Joe Biden, he sounded slow, didn't he, when he was delivering his speeches?
Fantastic work. Thank you, Callista. And many other members of my administration who are so committed to peace and are also committed to great success. Very importantly, let me recognize the very first group of distinguished members of the Board of Peace. They will be introduced by name in just a moment.
Be still, my beating heart.
That introduction. And to each and every one of you, we are truly honored by your presence today. Leaders of countries, in most cases very popular leaders. Some cases not so popular, but that's the way it goes in life. Thanks as well to...
I should also add, Israel just bombed the Israeli-Lebanon border, so the peace in the Middle East is
fantastic man. He just won a very big election. I'm very proud of him. Amazing. Along with former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Tony Blair. Thank you, Tony, for being here. We appreciate it.
For shame, honestly.
And members of the Board of Peace Executive Board. Great group. This week marks the 1-year anniversary of my second inauguration as president. No administration in history has achieved such a sweeping turnaround in 12 months' time.
Should we take a break and see whether he's still droning on interminably and meaninglessly when we come back, or do you want to listen to more of this?
With a very good general and a very good leader of Egypt. We're working on a dam that was built which precludes the Nile River from getting water. It's a little tough situation. But
see what I mean? What I was saying earlier about the horror going hand in hand with the ridiculousness, which makes it really hard to properly analyse the horror. If you're just joining us, this is the President of the United States of America talking almost undiluted gibberish at the World Economic Forum in Davos prior to unveiling a so-called Board of Peace, membership of which entails paying him $1 billion, and membership at the present point apparently includes the war criminal Vladimir Putin and the genocidal Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu.
And of course the war in Gaza, which is really... This
is live, by the way, in case you were listening yesterday and can't tell the difference.
Little fires that we'll put out, but they're little. They were giant, massive fires, and now they're down to little fires. We can put them out very easily. We have 59 countries that are involved in peace in the Middle East. Many of them not in the Middle East. They're near the Middle East, but they're not in the Middle East. And many have said that if Hamas doesn't do what they promised they would do, and I think they probably will, but they were born with rifles in their hands.
11 killed in Gaza yesterday, including journalists and children, according to medics on the ground, and 4 Syria-Lebanon crossings bombed in the last 24 hours. At least 2 dead in South Lebanon.
Countries have told me we
but don't worry, because Benjamin Netanyahu's on the board of peace.
That you traditionally think of as being involved in that. But that's a fire.
Where he will, I presume, be sitting on Vladimir Putin's knee.
Do something about that. But these are, I call them remnants. They're small remnants compared to what it was before it was massive.
Do you want to take a bet on when he actually starts
powerful countries
properly listing the
in another great
various clowns
for the ultimate
and criminals who are sitting on his board of
in June,
peace?
we obliterated
I'll leave you to decide if Tony Blair is indeed signing up for this, because there's a few days when he said he wasn't. A few days ago he said he wasn't. I'll leave you to decide which of those categories Tony Blair deserves to be put in, clown or criminal.
Bombers hit the air shafts and went deep into the earth and totally obliterated everything that they were doing. They were 2 months away from having a nuclear weapon. Can't let that happen.
No evidence or proof
Iran
for that.
does want to talk.
But I tell you what, thank God that old doddery bloke Joe Biden didn't win the election.
ISIS in Syria.
Didn't even run.
And very strongly, as you know, in my first administration, I took out al-Baghdadi, the founder of ISIS, and he was trying to start it up again because due to the tremendous talent of General Raisin Kane, as I call him, he wiped out ISIS in a period of 3 weeks in my first term. You know, we had a great first term. But the second term is, I think, blowing it away, actually.
ISIS is still active in Nigeria, Mozambique, Sahel, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sinai, conducting attacks, inspiring lone wolf attacks, and even a stabbing in Austria last year was undertaken by someone pledging loyalty to ISIS.
Tremendous progress, actually. We're very happy about that. We took off all sanctions, which gives them a chance to breathe. And he is working very, very hard, and I think he's going to put it all together.
Anyway, remember, if you find any of this remotely discomforting, disturbing, disgusting, shocking, tragic, sad, appalling, hideous, hilarious, you are suffering from what was until very recently described as Trump derangement syndrome. I'll tell you what, I'm beginning to worry he might drone on for so long we might have to cancel Mystery Hour. We'll return to Davos should the president actually get around to remembering what it is that he is supposed to be speaking about. I could now spend a few minutes running through the wars that he claims to have ended, one of which involving the country that didn't previously exist, known as Azerbaijan, which often pops up in his speeches. I suppose the people of Azerbaijan should be grateful that he almost gets their country correct when the people of Greenland will forevermore be known in Donald Trump's universe as the people of Iceland, while his press secretary Caroline Leavitt insists on the record that he never said Iceland instead of Greenland in the speech from which we took a clip a few moments ago, in which he said Iceland instead of Greenland on at least 3 separate occasions. But remember, ignore the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most terrible command. The question I was going to ask you was what we have learned from the last 24 hours. What have we learned from the last 24 hours? From the fact that leaders, including Keir Starmer, albeit that he began the week being quite conciliatory or appeasing, he certainly looks like ending it with a fairly hefty victory under his belt. You can tell how concerned Donald Trump was about Keir Starmer's refusal to bend by the fact that he completely U-turned on the US policy towards the Chagos Islands. Listen, there are criticisms to be made of the deal done over the Chagos Islands, but they weren't made by Donald Trump or Marco Rubio when they heralded and applauded the signing of the deal, which ended negotiations that had been started by Kemi Badenoch's Conservative Party. So the opportunism on display at PMQs yesterday was almost up there with the opportunism on display from Donald Trump. But it was an illustration for those of us who care about such things of the role that Keir Starmer was playing. Why would he take a ludicrous swing at Donald Trump that made him look like a hypocrite and a liar? Donald Trump takes a swing at Keir Starmer that makes Trump look like a hypocrite and a liar, unless he was really troubled by what Starmer was doing. So it looks like ending this week with Keir Starmer having secured another fairly hefty victory, but as a consequence, of course, of union. A victory secured as a consequence of concerted and unified action by powers, by countries, by leaders who are recognising, as Mark Carney described earlier this week, the disappearance of the old world order, the removal of the United States of America from the top of whatever political or military pyramid it is that we've all lived in for the last 80 years. And when you do that, you have to find a new vocabulary of resistance and rejection. And this week they've done it. Donald Trump is crawling back to Washington later with his tail between his legs. This speech, in large part, is an exercise in pretending otherwise. The future of Greenland, from a Greenlander's point of view, seems safe, although, of course, not long ago, he said he would never use military force in Venezuela, and then he did. So the promise, or the pledge yesterday that he would never use military force in Greenland is at least questionable and not something you'd necessarily bet your house on, but he climbed down. He's withdrawn the threat of sanctions, despite the fact that the people he was threatening to sanction have not done any of the things he said they would have to do in order to ensure the withdrawal of sanctions. And if you thought I was exaggerating 20 minutes ago when I told you that it is almost impossible to properly chronicle, analyse and keep track of this stuff because there is so much of it, well, you don't think I'm exaggerating now, because we should be talking about the cognitive decline. We should be talking about the cowardice. We should be talking about the war criminals and genocide apologists on his board of peace. We should be talking about the Orwellian dystopia ushered in by his press secretary lying about what we actually heard him say. We should be talking about Putin's presence on this ludicrous committee. We should be talking about the fact that Vladimir Putin is going to get the $1 billion he needs to pony up to Donald Trump from assets that were frozen as a punishment for the illegal invasion of Ukraine. We should be talking about the fact that he keeps saying Iceland instead of Greenland. We should be talking about all of these things, but we're not. I don't even know what we're talking about now. But that's fine, because this guy doesn't know what he's talking about either. I didn't mean that one. I meant to go back to Davos, but that's it works.
To do it, and then they came. They said, "You be the chairman." And but I take it very seriously. We have a great group of people and incredible young people that are leading it from within. It's running beautifully, started already. And every country, just about every country, wants to be a part of it. And we just sent out the letters a couple of days ago, and these are just the countries that are here. They happen to be in Davos. So we said, would be honored if you wanted to join us up on the stage. And it's really great. They're friends of mine. I think, let me see. Yeah, every one of them is a friend of mine. A couple, let's see, a couple I like, a couple I don't like. No, I like, actually, this group, I like every single one of them.
This is the President of the United States of America speaking at an august gathering of world leaders. This is not a comedy program. This is not an impersonator. This is not a drill.
They're great leaders. And the Board of Peace is composed of leaders, the top leaders in the world, actually. Last October, we released a plan for the permanent end to the conflict in Gaza, and I'm pleased to say that our vision was unanimously adopted by the United Nations Security Council late last year. Under phase one of this plan, we have painstakingly maintained that Gaza, and we're going to have it very strongly, and it's what we have, maintained the Gaza ceasefire, delivered record levels of humanitarian aid. We've given aid,
Israeli fire killed 11 in Gaza yesterday, including journalists and children, and there were 4 strikes on southern Lebanon.
The United States, but I want to thank some of the
4 Syria-Lebanon border crossings bombed. 2 dead in South Lebanon, but on he goes.
Great,
and of course, Caroline Leavitt will be along in a moment to tell you that none of that happened.
We go out and purchase food, and you don't hear those stories anymore with people starving. And secured the release of all 20, we secured the release of all 20 living hostages. Now I want to thank Steve Witkoff and Jared and everybody for working so hard. They worked so hard, but there were 20 remaining living hostages. Now we got hundreds out, but the last 20, I said, boy, that's going to be a tough one. I said that a year before. And it was a tough one, but we got them. Got all 20, every one of them. And we had also about 28 that were dead. But the parents wanted them just as though they were living, just as much. In some cases, it almost seemed more. It was amazing, actually, the love. but their boy had been killed. In just about all cases, young men.
So, again, if you thought I was exaggerating when I told you that it was impossible properly to chronicle, I rarely get the chance to take this stuff live because of the time differences between the United Kingdom and the United States. But what do you do? In any other circumstances, the leader of the free world delivering a speech about the formation of a rival body to the United Nations Security Council would be the focus of our absolutely undiluted attention. But this is a little bit like Grandpa from The Simpsons delivering an interminable monologue on primetime television.